So for me, I've supported myself and my husband through a nutritional journey by eating an antiviral diet. Like that's a new one, right? But I focus on that because viruses are pathogens and they break our body down, and the brain is affected in the same way. So if I stay away from eggs and dairy and a lot of red meat and pork and things like that, not that, I mean, I want to eat it. I have nothing against it. But for me, with my chronic inflammation, my chronic stress levels, I have to be extra careful. And I try to stay away from things that will bog down my body and my brain.
Well, and one of the things that you mentioned that we've talked about as well is nutrition, like making sure that you're actually addressing the root causes of the problem. You know, when somebody has a chemical imbalance and there's all these different disputes about what the root causes of these disorders are, but the problem is I think there are so many different facets to it. That's why I advocate for, therapy. You need therapy because people with mental health issues like bipolar disorder have unhealthy thought and behavior patterns. They have unhealthy coping mechanisms, irrational thoughts, unhealed trauma. There's all these things that need to be addressed with a therapist and healed and identified so that you can learn how to start thinking in a healthy way. And then, like you've mentioned, and I think you've talked some, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what your experience is learning more about nutritional support and how that affects your brain. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's really important.
Absolutely. I mean, I can definitely talk from my experience because there's plenty of theories out there, right, about what is best for the bipolar brain. So I'll just need to be clear that I'm not a doctor. I'm not even a nutritionist. Okay. But I am obsessed with bipolar and research around bipolar. I'm also obsessed with my own health. And I have chronic illness that was, stamped on me many years ago, 25 years ago, even before that, when I was a teenager, with endometriosis and hormonal problems and chronic inflammation and things like that. So I've always been on the pursuit of total recovery, and there's been some really great times where I've had wonderful breakthroughs. I'm somebody that has a ton of energy naturally for some reason. Even with chronic pain, nobody would ever know in a million years because I have some sort of energy reserve, which, it's probably why my husband and I were so attracted to each other. He had mania energy and I have whatever this magic temple energy is. And we were just like, zoop. So I have made all the changes that could be made, to get rid of food allergens and to see nutritionists. And then my own mental health. I stay in counseling, been in counseling for 20 plus years for my trauma and abuse issues. I stay in counseling. I have gone to school to be a substance abuse counselor myself. And so it's even more important that I stay in treatment, right?
Right.
But as far as the brain goes, I mean, to bring it back to biology 101, the brain uses glucose as fuel. So I've been thinking a lot about that for the past several years and have been using that just as the basis for my husband's brain support, just doing things like juicing and clean smoothies, like using wild blueberries, which is a extremely high antioxidant, staying away from inflammatory foods, foods that feed viruses like eggs and dairy. So if you do have an inflammation, there's usually many layers. People with bipolar might have many other things going on too, right?
Right.
So if you have cortisol overload, if you have adrenaline overload, all those things could be feeding viruses in the body. Viruses are a new word. We didn't even call the flu a virus. We called it the flu, but no, it's a virus. So knowing that viruses live in our body has been an awakening for me. things like shingles and things like Epstein-Barr that can cause chronic pain, inflammation, attack nerves, can, affect your brain function. So for me, I've supported myself and my husband through a nutritional journey by eating an antiviral diet. Like, that's a new one, right? But I focus on that because viruses are pathogens and they break our body down, and the brain is affected in the same way. So if I stay away from eggs and dairy and a lot of red meat and pork and things like that, not that, I mean, I want to eat it. I have nothing against it. But for me, with my chronic inflammation, my chronic stress levels, I have to be extra careful. And I try to stay away from things that will bog down my body and my brain.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so when you're in your Clubhouse, do you talk about things like that? Do you talk about self-care, and like what kinds of things do you talk about in your Clubhouse meetings?
Oh my gosh, what don't we talk about? We talk about everything. But first of all, let me say this. My Clubhouse is such a beautiful space. I'm so lucky to have, these 40 to 100 people that keep showing up. And I contribute that to our spirit, the type of spirit these people have, because I definitely approach everything as a spirit first and then a body second. So I guess that's why I would say why I have that, like unlimited energy source to keep going, because I don't feel like this body runs the show, I know that my spirit runs the show. And if I'm in something with my heart and my spirit first, then I'll have the power to follow up with my mind and body, right?
Right.
So we focus on that a lot. We focus on, how's your spirit doing? What's your energy doing? What are you doing with your energy? Oh my gosh. Well, not only is my husband or spouse bipolar, but my mom's a narcissist, and my sister abandoned me, and my last 12 relationships were a disaster. So what chance do we have to make this one work? So I try to talk a lot more about where is the spouse in this, because it's very easy to put your attention on bipolar and blame everything on bipolar, right? Bipolar ruined my life, and bipolar does ruin families and lives and marriages for sure. But there's a reason why you got there. So if you're in a relationship with somebody that has all the symptoms of a dysphoric manic person, which is, acute narcissism, which is gaslighting, which is a lot of very harmful, abusive verbal language, can even turn to physical abuse, then we need to get stronger as the partner, to change those things, to even get to the first boundary, which says, I'm not going to tolerate abuse.
Right.